Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is your Photo News Fix. This fix is brought to you once again by Rode and their 2019 My Road Reel competition. Now, if you haven't entered yet, what the f are you waiting for? The clock is counting down. You have roughly 20 days from the time this is posted to get entered for your chance to win some of the $1 million in prizes across 28 categories. To learn more, head on over to bit.ly/FroReel19. First up, remember recently when Sony announced their overpriced 35 1.8 for $750? Some people were wondering, and by some people, I mean me, why it was priced so high for what it actually is. Well, it turns out that it might not be Sony's fault. It's the fault of tariffs being imposed on Chinese-made goods coming into the United States, and it's about to get even worse. Threats of new tariffs being imposed starting September 1st have been levied. A proposed tariff of 10%, which is on top of the current 25% tariff that's already in effect, may increase prices of cameras, lenses, and accessories imported from China. The items on the list that might see tariffs, if I'm reading this correctly, include things like live purebred breeding horses, dairy cows, and live asses, whatever those are. I guess tariffs would be levied on me if I was imported from China. But the list for photography-related items that might see tariffs is too long to even list. Now, there's everything from picture frames to instant cameras to LCD screens and lenses. So if these tariffs are imposed, I may just have to do the unthinkable. Shop in Canada, eh?
Oh, eh?
I mean, I probably wouldn't even go to Canada to shop because their beer sucks. I don't even like beer. Don't send John Candy after me. Next, like Canon, Sony has announced they expect to see a dramatic drop in camera sales to the tune of 1.4 million fewer cameras than they sold in 2017. In a document titled Supplemental Information of their financial results for Q1 2019, they pointed out that they sold 4.4 million cameras in 2017 and only 3.6 million in 2018, and they expect to sell at least 800,000 less units in 2019. What does this mean? What do you mean? Oh, what do you mean? Does this mean they are in as much trouble as Canon? No, of course not, because what this report does not account for are all the sensors Sony makes for every other camera manufacturer. Now, I personally don't buy into the doom and gloom that's being tossed around in the photo industry. What I do think, though, is Sony might want to slow its roll on releasing new cameras before their already solid cameras have reached the end of their life. Now, what do you think about all of this? First, we had the ISO arms race, followed by the ever-growing megapixel race, which luckily has slowed down over the last few cycles. But now, with Sony releasing a 61 megapixel A7R4, is Canon ready to one-up them? Question mark?
Damn it! Who typed a question mark on the teleprompter?
Canon Rumors is reporting that 2 different high megapixel sensors are being tested in EOS R style bodies. This new camera would most likely be the long-awaited replacement to the EOS 5DS and 5DSR and include a sensor with at least 80 megapixels. A source is quoted as saying, Canon is about to release brand new advancements in sensor technology and has caught up to Sony.
Bullshit.
Wow, they've caught up to Sony. Too bad Canon had an 80-plus year head start manufacturing these types of cameras. Do I think this rumor is true? Probably, because back in 2015 at Canon World Expo, we saw cameras with 125 and, if I'm not mistaken, 250 megapixels. Now, I will say this again. I think Canon is the sleeper in the industry and not to be underestimated. Now, don't paint me a fool, Canon. And finally, will this be Nikon's next Z camera? What you're looking at is a patent filed in Japan for what looks to be a Nikon Z aps-c mirrorless camera, but without an EVF. First up, if it doesn't have an EVF, it's just a glorified cell phone, in my opinion. Now, I know some people use the LCD screen as their primary way of shooting, but in my experience, it's much harder to get your lines straight, it's far less stable, you look like an amateur, and how do you get the proper exposure in bright light?
You're shooting full auto.
Ah, touche, Dan. Touche. Or as I like to say, touchy. From the looks of the renderings, the camera seems to be designed similarly to the Z Space 6 and Z Space 7, with a few buttons moved and no EVF. If this is real, I think this is smart on Nikon's part to jump into the lower-end mirrorless game. My only hope is, if it doesn't have a built-in EVF, that you can purchase one as an accessory. Then again, my hopes may be dashed because Nikon is the same company who created a camera grip with no functioning buttons for the Z Space 6 and Z Space 7. Yeah. There you have it. That's your photo news fix this time around. To check out the last fix, go ahead and click on the screen right here. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And that is where I'm gonna leave it. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.